Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Today we're going to be talking about fear in terms of a job, resume, or interviews, trying to figure out how fear fits into whether we're successful or not and how to overcome some of the problems that it brings to us. And my guest is back, Tom Denham from Careers in Transition.
Thank you for having me back.
We are very happy
to be here.
We're really wrapping up what has been a large series of programs on jobs. Not that we can't do another one.
Right.
But I'm thinking together all these things make quite a nice package.
Right. We could sell some CDs, I'm sure.
Never know. So fear.
Fear.
You put it one way, F period, E period,
it's an acronym.
A period, R period.
That's right. False evidence appearing real.
Yeah, let's talk about what it is first,
yeah,
and then we can talk about why we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's something one of my doctoral teachers taught me, was fear was false evidence appearing real. Fear is a natural emotion. We've all had that. It's embedded in our subconscious, and it's our reaction to either an imagined threat or a real threat. It's our reaction to that.
And I guess the problem is when it's hard to control, when it interferes with our functioning.
Right. I mean, fear can either be a great motivator or an appropriate amount.
Right,
or
like
excessive fear can create analysis paralysis where we don't move forward.
So that makes it a lot like stress, which I think a lot of people, when they define stress, it's always bad. Mm-hmm. But stress, in a strictly scientific sense, is what kind of holds things together.
Right. Well, prolonged stress is not, it's stressful.
Right. and too much of anything is often bad. So
right.
In this case also. So how are we going to talk about it? You know, we're not psychologists, and yet we're talking about something which is profoundly psychological.
Right. Well, in my private practice, when I'm dealing with a client who comes in and wants to make some kind of job or career change, the first thing is they may not know what they want to do. So I run them through my process, doing self-assessment, career exploration, and an action plan. My concern is they get to the action plan. I have them focused, but there is something embedded in their subconscious, fear, that prevents them from moving forward. So they have the action plan and everything, but they don't pull the trigger.
So
that's my concern.
I don't know if you've already said this, but analysis paralysis.
Analysis
but
paralysis.
Paralysis is part of the problem.
Right. So fear is really a state of mind. It's about how you control your thoughts. So if you say, if I do this particular job or if I go in this particular direction, you might create disaster scenarios in your head. I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, I don't want to go back to school, and you just focus on the negative. And if you focus on fear, you'll get more fear, and it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So in a way, it's a fundamental stumbling block that we have to deal with, and that's why we're talking about it.
Right. And I've written extensively about this, and people can go to the internet and they can type in "got fear" with a question mark,
and that will
overcoming
like
fear. Yeah, right. That's right. That's right. We all have fear.
Now you're saying fear, but we're not speaking about this from a scientific perspective. I'm not sure fear is even cataloged, but things like anxiety is certainly. Mm-hmm. Now, are there flavors of fear? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
I think I'd probably go back to, is it real or imagined? We were talking earlier about if I was home and I was planning a trip to the Adirondacks and I was afraid of a bear, that would be imagined.
At home, because you're at home, right.
If I'm out in the Adirondacks and a bear is charging me, that's a real.
And maybe it'll help you run faster.
Right.
Right. Well, that's true. I mean, I've heard stories about people doing things that they didn't think they could possibly physically do because of super strong emotions.
Right. That's right. So you have to identify what the fear is. and really feel the fear. What am I feeling at this time? And then you have to do a little, you have to separate yourself out and say, is this real or imagined? And then you have to control your thoughts, because your thoughts can absolutely run wild about it. So you have to take the emotion out of it.
Now,
and what you want to focus on is the outcome. So if you're going to do a career or job change, you have to visualize the ideal. You have to visualize what that outcome is going to be. So you have to see yourself in that new job rather than focusing on all the obstacles that it'll take to get to that new job.
So I guess the trick then for you is get them out of this state of fear where all they see is spinning lights, and I mean that would be an extreme case.
Right.
But they're certainly not picking up on all subtle cues, and they're not letting themselves be and perform to the level they could.
Right, right. In other words, they're holding themselves back.
Right.
It's kind of like in Olympic sports, going to your event and being afraid that you're going to lose it. Well, you are going to lose it.
If you're locked up like
if
that,
that's your
right.
mindset, or if you're afraid of all the other competitors, yes,
Right.
you are going to lose that race. So in Olympic athletes, what they do is a thing called visual motor rehearsal. They visualize themselves going through their event and winning.
And they've done it so many times in this case that they probably have a much easier time. But the people you're working with, let's say, whether they want to open a new business or apply for a job that they feel is a stretch.
Right. So what you have to do is get fixated and obsess only about the ideal outcome, instead of the potential roadblocks and hurdles that are along the way. If you focus on the hurdles, then you'll never get to the ideal. And you have to decide, how badly do you want this? How badly do you want to make a job change? How badly do you want to make a career change? I mean, is it in your heart? Do you have really what it takes to accomplish this?
Well, I could see that being a problem for a lot of people. Much of what we want that so that we can have something else. I would say, I don't know what percentage, I have no idea, it's kind of an interesting study, of people who are actually working not because of the work they're doing. You know, they didn't sign up to do this job so
Right.
that the highway would be good. They signed up because I need a job and I'm pretty good with my hands.
Right.
And what they're really wanting is they're imagining themselves with their happy family and being able to travel.
Right. Well, my goal is to help clients have both. Is have a good work life and a good family life.
Work-life balance, I guess.
It's absolutely key. Work is the single most activity that takes up our time. So if you're going to work and you don't like what you're doing, you're really wasting your life. Now, you know, I have a family as well, but the reality is my daughter's in school most of the day. I'm not spending 8 hours a day with her.
But you're also happy with what you do.
I'm happy with the work I'm doing. I find it very fulfilling. So my goal with all my clients is to help them identify 3 types of jobs: the ideal job, the backup job, and then the safety job. So the ideal job is the dream job. That's the job you have always wanted to do, and that's going to be the job where you're going to be the most satisfied and will require the most sacrifice to get.
So when we're talking about fear now, to bring it back to the topic, they may be in any of these cases, but especially probably 1 or 2, and not the ideal job. They're probably trying to get to the ideal job.
Oftentimes they don't know what the ideal job is. So they're just focused on the day-to-day, let me get through this day, this week. So what the problem is, they don't know how the day-to-day fits into the larger picture. And oftentimes they come in late in life and the dots don't connect to where they really want to be. They're off track.
The people that you deal with in terms of fear, and maybe we should enlarge a little bit.
Sure.
Fear, anxiety, depression, whatever else they might be going through emotionally as reacting, trying to, or thinking about achieving something. What do you find in people that come to you? Where does this fear come? It seems like it might not be scary to come to you. They've already done that.
Well, even before that, I tell people the most difficult part of career counseling is calling me.
And they've done it.
Yes. The second most difficult thing is to make an appointment, and the third most difficult thing is to keep the appointment. And all along the way, fear can creep in and prevent somebody from taking action.
So at any point of this, you're going through the exercises, you're trying to help them figure out what they might like to do, and they're sitting there afraid.
Afraid. Sometimes they're afraid of what they might find. Sometimes about their future and their career. Sometimes they're afraid about what they might find about themselves. They may find out that they really haven't lived a very accomplished life, that perhaps they're in their mid-50s and they're not where they want to be financially, and they're not where they want to be professionally, and they're not where they want to be personally. And so career development and career counseling, and what I do, is a self-reflective process. So you have to have some courage to do that and to really face some of these realities. You can continue to bury it, but it will resurface later on.
Now, before we go into how do you get out of this quagmire, do some people not recognize what the problem is? They don't realize they're afraid. They don't realize they're anxious or whatever else negative emotion that's keeping them from going.
I find most people are not self-aware. If you ask the average person, what are your top 5 values, interests, personality traits, and skills, they would have a real challenging time doing that. That's one of the first exercises I do with my clients, even before they come to the appointment. I say, write down your top 5 values, interests, personality traits, and skills. And some of them will come to the appointment and either the assignment's half done or they will tell me that this was very challenging and they've never had to do this before.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot here. How do you help somebody realize then that they really are afraid, and that's much of what's keeping them back?
I can reflect back to them. I'll do some rephrasing. I'll say, it sounds like you're really afraid about this, and then I'll get them to talk about it, and then we'll decide whether it's real or imagined. A fear, most of the time it's imagined. That in order for people to move forward, they have to get out of the way of themselves.
Do you think we've all been corrected by maybe our teacher, our parents, and of course we all want to shine to people that either are bigger than us, more important, they're nourishing us, the people that we grew up in that trained us to be humans and in society, and we want to please them. So I guess we could all be afraid of failure there.
Yeah, we could be afraid of failure. We could also be afraid of
success. And they're not here anymore.
Right. That's carrying through. A lot of people have had perhaps expectations about you, societal expectations. I mean, if you're 50 years old, you're supposed, the society says you're supposed to be driving this kind of car, living in this kind of neighborhood, in this kind of house, and having these types of people in your life, and having these kind of material possessions. And that's why it's so important to go back and create your own personal definition of success.
It almost makes you think, why do we have to deal with this? Can't we just deal with the physical problem of what do I need to do to get a job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you do, right?
Yeah. Fear is crippling. It is really crippling. And many times I can show my client the other side, the promised land, and they need a lot more work than I can provide for them. So oftentimes I will make referrals out to other trained professionals.
You might need a psychologist
who can deal with these things. That's right. I find many people have self-defeating behaviors, negative self-talk. They will also think very small of themselves and of their future. And most of the time, I'm thinking larger than the client is.
Right. Okay, let's get into the cures.
Okay.
What do we do to overcome them?
There's a couple things. The first thing is, there's the comfort zone, for example. We tend not to want to change because we're in that comfort zone. It's the seek pleasure and avoid pain types of thing. But when you move outside that comfort zone, that's where you grow the most. And so you have to identify what the comfort zone is and move in and out of that. So for example, if somebody was doing a job search and they were afraid of networking, maybe instead of going to a 500-person networking bonanza at the Crown Plaza, why don't they take one person out to lunch or coffee first? and then maybe take another person out to lunch and do that for a little bit, then move to a small group setting, do that for a little bit, and then move to a larger group setting. And so as a result of that, you're going to build up this emotional resilience.
So that strikes me as a solution to another kind of a problem where you have a big problem. You can't solve the big problem in one step because it's not a one step. You have to break it into small steps.
You have to chunk it.
But if you're so focused on the big problem, it seems impossible.
Right. As a mountain climber, I'm always fixated on the summit. But there are times when I actually go to some of these major mountains out west, and when I see it for the very first time, I'm completely overwhelmed and I want to come home. Yeah, it's absolutely impossible. But in mountaineering, we have this thing called the mountaineering step, or also known as the rest step, and you just put one foot in front of the other and you rest for a nanosecond, and that's how you get to the top of the mountain. And the same thing applies for doing your job search. You have to chunk it. You have to break it down into a task that is so small that it's impossible to fail. So small.
And now you're moving forward.
You're moving forward. So for somebody to look at networking and go, oh my gosh, I'm completely overwhelmed with that. I don't want to do anything. I'm going to shut down.
I don't know what to say when I get there. There's so many people.
You start with one person. You start with your inner circle and somebody you trust, and then you start with that, and then you build your emotional resilience every time you work with one person, and then after that a small group, and then a larger group, and then you keep doing that, and then you can get to the big group. And all of a sudden you're outside the comfort zone, you're trained, and now you know how to do this. And you may even still not like to do it, but you're able to do it.
And you're focused on an activity and not your fear.
You're focused on the activity, and you have to, again, hyper-focus on the end goal. What do you want the ideal outcome to be? Focus on that, rather than the actual activity. It's kind of like exercise. I mean,
but you have to be careful, right? You can't walk up to the first person and blurt out, I need a job that pays a whole lot, and that they're like, I don't think that's how we do networking.
No. And that's why you want to sit down with somebody you trust first. And it's very much like exercising. I mean, exercising is painful. When I go out for a run at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's not a lot of fun, especially if it's January.
So it's not all endorphins and just pleasure?
No. Well, the pleasure is that I'm in great shape, and I feel good about myself, and I'm keeping my health care costs down. And so that's what I'm trying to focus on, is how great I'm going to feel afterwards and how energized I'm going to be. But when I'm in the run and it's 20 degrees outside, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning,
especially when
it's a challenge.
Yeah, especially when you're not quite started yet.
Right, yeah. So getting outside the comfort zone, and then we talked about visualizing. You have to know what the end goal is and have a visual picture in your head. So you have to visualize yourself being successful, being in that job, and being happy.
It's almost like it would be nice if somebody distracted us from our fear, but it's harder if you have to do it yourself.
You have to have incredible self-discipline. And these articles that I've written, Overcoming Fear and God Fear, can help people make sense of this. And there's certainly lots of books and resources out there, but I wanted to give a quick guide on how to deal with this. Controlling fear is up to you. I mean, there's certain people that will help you, but you have to do behavior modification. That's really what it's about, thought control.
So how would you sum up, I guess we've covered a couple things. I'm not trying to sum up the program,
it's okay.
Just how to deal with fear. What would be the first thing that you would do?
Well, first thing I would do is determine whether it's real or imagined. Is my level of fear proportionate to the actual fear? And then I would feel the fear. I would give it a name. I would label it. And then I would come up with various solutions to deal with it. And sometimes a way to handle this, if it's possible, is to go to bed. You take a day and just sleep on it and try to tackle it the next day being fresh. Another thing is to surround yourself with people that can help you overcome this problem. And that's the problem with many people who do job searches. They're trying to do their job search all by themselves.
It sounds like if someone takes your advice, they're working this through in their mind when they're not wildly fearful. Because when you're really fearful, you might just fall apart right at that moment.
Well, right. I mean, you're so overwhelmed by the emotion that making a rational, calculated decision is just not possible.
So you need to kind of have this strategy in your mind before this fear gets a hold of you?
Well, yeah, if possible. But sometimes just fear creeps in unexpectedly.
But I mean, if they had already figured out, okay, this is fear.
Okay,
And
you've
they
identified
recognized it, right.
Yep.
Now when it comes, they're going to say, oh, here it goes again. I'm falling apart.
Right, but you can say, and this happens to me all the time, I'll be thinking about something and I'll say, wow, is that true? I mean, I don't have any data to support that particular fear that I'm thinking about right now. And then I think, is this imagined? And I think to myself, yeah, I'm totally making this up in my head.
Right. And it could be anything in this case. It could be what somebody thinks about you or how you think you're going to do. Or
Absolutely. But it is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you are going to do a job search and you're saying, I'm afraid I'm too old, I'm afraid I don't have enough time, I'm afraid I don't have enough networking contacts, I'm afraid of my resume, I'm afraid of what to wear, I'm afraid of what they'll say in the interview, you're doomed.
Instead of, I have a lot of experience to offer.
Focus on the positive.
I'm old, yeah.
That's right. Focus on your strengths. Another way to overcome fear is focus on past accomplishments and success. Look at things that you've been successful. How did you become successful at those things? What were the skills that you developed? What are the attributes that you have that you've learned from that?
Sounds like good advice. What kind of things might be triggers? Maybe this doesn't really fit here, but as an analogy with someone who's got an alcohol problem or maybe a gambling problem, they probably shouldn't be looking at horse races, like saying, oh, good, tomorrow's the horse race, I'm going to watch that.
Right.
What kind of triggers do you find that
Well, certainly when it comes to the job search, there's a lot of negative things that are in the media. So if you hear negative job numbers come out, or let's say the unemployment rate goes up another 1/10 of a percentage point, that's going to be an emotional trigger that either is going to create more fear or that is going to paralyze you or demotivate you. So again, you have to focus on the positive. If the national unemployment rate is 9.1%, but the local unemployment rate is 7.1% or 7.2%, the positive is better than the national average.
And as we both know, there are a lot of jobs that are going begging.
Right. And yes, I mean, we do live in a recession. We can't deny that. That is a real threat. But if you think about all the people that are applying for jobs and you don't focus on your own race and what you can do and what you can take responsibility for, if you don't focus on your own career management, you'll sabotage.
Anything else? I mean, any other suggestions?
When it comes to fear? Mm-hmm. Well, a couple other things. One is you have to be free to fail. There's an old expression: you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So my daughter plays soccer. If she doesn't take a shot on goal, it's like you're saying no to yourself. Right. So I just had a client the other day, and we were discussing whether she should apply for this job, and I couldn't think of any reason why she shouldn't apply for the job. She was stepping back and saying, well, if I get this job, I don't know if I want to take it. And I said to her, you don't have an offer and you don't have an interview. You have nothing. So why don't you go through that process? And she had the time to do this.
And you'll also learn more about the job.
You'll learn more about the job, and you have to look at the positives. She doesn't have a job right now. It is a part-time job. It's going to plug a hole in the resume, and it's going to give her networking contacts, and could lead to other things. So you've got to be able to go out and take a risk. The other thing is, when it comes to fears, you have to decide what sacrifice you're willing to make, and that requires you to go back, do the self-assessment, and get focused. And that's what I do. I help people get focused. Most people are not focused. When you get focused on what you really want, you're going to get passionate about it. And the little things that come up along the way, you're not going to be afraid of, and you're just going to steamroll right over them.
That goes back to that basic problem that came up earlier in the conversation. If the reason you want the job is only because I need the money, and you're focused now on just the payment, you're not going to be focused on the work, you're not going to have all the details, and you're not going to be enthusiastic. You're not going to be truly enthusiastic about the job.
Right. Well, money is a very poor long-term motivator. Now, everyone needs a baseline salary to pay their bills and to get ahead. But if you're focused on the money, you may get the money, but you won't get the meaning. If you focus on meaning, you may get meaning plus the money.
So is it fair to say that the fear needs to be replaced by something practical? And sometimes that's just more information. It's knowing what small step to take first. It's
Right.
knowing what you want.
It's getting hyper-focused on the goal and then identifying the real barriers in order to achieve that. So what I call it a gap analysis. So let's say you want to be in this ideal job, but you're back here. That's like looking at the summit of a mountain and going, I really want to be at the top, but it's so big, I won't do anything. So you have to identify what the barriers are to close that gap. Like, one of the barriers could be, I don't have a pair of boots, or I don't have a backpack. Well, then what do you need to do in order to solve that problem incrementally
Right.
to get there? The problem is most people don't even focus on the summit.
I sometimes find, and this to some extent goes back to swimming, because I used to swim kilometers, and I found that 3/4 of the way through was the toughest part, because suddenly I'm tired and it seems so far away. Once you get to like 7/8, now you start seeing the finish line, and what happened to all the tired? It's gone.
Right, right. Sometimes when I'm climbing and I'm in a lot of pain, I'll think about checking my email. I'll think about mowing my lawn. I think about
Just to get through that tough period.
Yeah, I'll think about I gotta do the laundry, and I gotta do these other things. And before you know it, half an hour, 45 minutes has passed, and you just don't feel the pain whatsoever.
Well, almost if we identify this strategy, it's just do it anyway. Just
you have
keep
to feel
going
the fear,
somehow.
and you have to
Just keep
push.
going
You have to
somehow.
push right through it, and that requires a lot of self-determination and sacrifice. And with any goal, you have to decide, how hungry am I? Do I really want this, and what sacrifices am I willing to make in order to achieve this? If you're not willing to make the sacrifices to get your ideal job, then what's the second place job, and what's the third place job, and what's the fourth place job? But for most people who come to me, they don't even know the priority order of these jobs. And that's where they go into what I call career roundabout syndrome. It's like running in place. They go round and round. There's all these options that they have, but they never make a decision about it. So it's like running in place and not going anywhere.
So
Very
you have
frustrating.
to separate, I guess, in this fear, even whether it's a real dangerous thing, or if you're afraid because something bad might happen. Forget that part. You have to separate between I'm afraid because I'm not prepared, and I'm afraid for no good reason.
Right, right. Now, if I asked you to, after the show is over, to go down to the Crowne Plaza and give a speech to 1,000 people about accounting, you'd probably be afraid.
Well, it may not be the best example. I mean, I know that there's no possible way I can do it, so I wouldn't be
Oh, no.
afraid.
No,
I would
there's
be
a-
afraid of what was going to happen afterwards.
See, there is a possible way that you would do it, but you would be afraid of what your performance would be.
Well, I know what my performance would be.
Yes, you be. So there's an example of
A reasonable fear
A
based
reasonable
on
fear.
I
Now,
need to work out another way to handle this.
If you were to
like
ask,
Tom.
if you were asked to do a speaking engagement in front of a smaller group of people who are librarians on a topic that you were afraid of, you still might be a little afraid, but that would be much more manageable to handle.
Right, the magnitude of how big of a fool you would be.
Right. That would not be so far outside your comfort zone. The first one is so far outside your comfort zone that it's probably set up for failure.
Yeah, I also found doing exercises at the gym with weights that the part of my body which was the weakest was the one that I, of course, wanted to train the least.
Mm-hmm.
That was the hardest one, and it caused the most pain to do it. But then it's the biggest payback.
Yeah.
So another possibility.
I just want to encourage everyone that's watching the show to live a life free of fear, because our time here is short, and fear can really hold you back from achieving the things that you want professionally and doing the things that you want personally.
So to really separate this emotional part from the serious needs that we all have, we don't mean to run down at all the fact that people need money to live. Some people are out of work. and they're really having a difficult time.
Right.
But trying to help the people that fear is holding back because it's making it harder for them.
Right. So, we do have a lot of people in our community that have been unemployed who are really, really struggling. So instead of being gripped by that fear, the question for me is, okay, so this is my present situation. What can I do incrementally to get me out of this situation? What are 3 things that I could do today to help move me toward my vision or my ideal or get me out of it? But if you're focused on, we've lost our job, now we're going to lose our house, now we're going to go bankrupt, now we're going to get divorced, now we're going to be homeless, then you're going in the wrong direction. That's fear, that's not faith. You need to be going in this direction.
And you should be afraid of that.
Well,
I mean, from the point of view of don't do it.
Well, the thing is, if you go down the dark side, that's what's going to happen.
And so you
don't have a possibility. It's very much like playing baseball. If you go to the plate and you think, I hope I don't strike out, I hope I don't strike out, I hope I don't, you're going to strike out.
Right. Because you don't see the ball.
What you need to do is you need to go to the plate and saying, I'm going to get a single. That's what you need to say. I need to get a single.
It does help.
Maybe not even a home run. I'm going to hit a single. It's realistic. That's all you need to do. You get up to the plate and you keep hitting singles. Wind up in the Hall of Fame.
And you get around to home.
Right, that's right. Hopefully somebody else
people keep doing that,
hitting a single. But you've got to have that vision that things will get better.
So how could we sum up, I guess, if you were going to say one thing about fear and how to overcome it, what would you say?
Fear is a natural emotion. It's either real or imagined. You need to identify whether it is real or imagined. Identify and give the fear a name, and then come up with positive thought control and solutions of how you will overcome this fear. And the other thing is, I would definitely say surround yourself with other people that can help you solve this problem. Don't try to do it by yourself. That's why people come to me as a career counselor. They're afraid about their job search. They're afraid about losing their job. They're afraid about going to grad school. Afraid about changing careers.
You're a safe person to talk to.
I'm safe. I'm objective. I'm trained to do this. But I also tell them I'm not the only one that they should be having in their what I call a dream team. You need to surround yourself with 10 other people that are going to help you achieve this goal.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for watching. I'm not afraid to say, have a great week, and see you again next time. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.